restroom stayed cold as those boots hit the floor, and that metal door snapped shut behind two men moving slow. The smaller man stepped back with nervous energy, realizing the trust he carried was slipping fast. A quick blade flashed under the low light, and a sharp slice opened his throat as the silence tightened. The killer walked out steady with red crawling across his hands, showing no shake in his breath. That man was 30-year-old Barry Mills, who entered prison years earlier as a barely known California kid. His journey toward this moment started long before that stall, and it built a figure the Aryan Brotherhood respected with real fear. Windsor stayed small during those years, with long roads curling through farmland and neighborhoods moving at slow rhythms under the Sonoma County sun. Folks in that town rarely imagined anything wild brewing in those quiet corners, and young Barry Mills mostly blended into that calm setting without any loud presence. His early life never showed signs pointing toward violence, and his surroundings carried enough peace to hide the shifts growing inside him. Barry eventually drifted toward restless urges that kept pushing him toward reckless movement, and he started boosting cars with local kids searching for cheap thrills. He moved through those petty crews with steady interest, studying every quick hustle that seemed exciting to him. Those early crimes revealed a teenager moving without real direction, and his habits pulled him further away from any stable path offered by the town. His first real collision with the law came at 19 years old, when officers arrested him for auto theft connected to a warrant stretching back to Sonoma County. The court atmosphere hit him harder than expected as he stepped forward asking for probation with shaky confidence. The judge denied that plea and claimed the young man needed structure, handing down a sentence that placed him in county custody. That decision delivered Barry into confinement for the first meaningful stretch of his life. Inside the jail, Barry faced his first real taste of hierarchy as older inmates watched newcomers with sharp eyes and steady pressure. He tried to adjust to the routines filling that tight space, but impatience grew inside him quickly. The confinement created a heavy frustration that pushed him toward bold ideas, and those impulses shaped the next risky step he attempted. On January 29, 1968, Barry escaped from the Sonoma County Honor Farm with another inmate named Buddy Coleman, slipping into the cold night as guards scrambled behind them. That freedom offered a short rush that vanished fast, since authorities recaptured him weeks later in his hometown. The arrest hit him with additional charges and a harsher understanding of the system's reach. His return to custody changed how he viewed authority, reinforcing the idea that running from consequences never kept things controlled. The court sentenced him to 1 year and 1 day in state custody for the escape, and those extra months deepened his frustration. Barry left that environment in March 1969 with fresh intentions but no solid blueprint for staying clean. He stepped back into Windsor with limited opportunity, drifting without guidance or discipline. That lack of direction created an opening for another bad move that arrived sooner than anyone expected. On January 30th, 1970, Barry teamed up with William Hackworth for an armed robbery targeting a convenience store in Stewart's Point, pushing his crimes into a far more serious category. The investigation moved fast as officers identified Hackworth, and Hackworth eventually testified against Barry. That betrayal revealed how fragile loyalty stayed in those criminal partnerships, leaving Barry stunned as his partner folded under pressure. His reputation suffered heavy damage in court, but he mainly focused on the new life-altering sentence approaching him. In February 1970, the judge gave Barry a term of 5 years to life, sending him directly into California's tough penitentiary system. That penalty opened the gate toward a violent world he never anticipated during his early years. He entered the system with limited understanding of what awaited him, carrying frustration from Hackworth's betrayal and fear of the environment ahead. Those emotions fueled his mindset as he prepared for a long stretch within walls dominated by hard men and ruthless politics. San Quentin State Prison would soon reshape Barry's identity in ways nobody expected, turning a drifting young offender into someone preparing for survival under the harshest circumstances. That next chapter marked the beginning of a transformation that carried him deeper into structures far more dangerous than anything Windsor ever offered him. Barry stepped into San Quentin carrying tension from his past, and the atmosphere inside that place matched his internal storm with heavy force. The facility already carried whispers about racial hostility spreading across the yards, and older convicts mentioned shifting alliances forming among groups preparing for rough seasons. Barry walked through those gates with wide eyes, noticing the aggressive energy moving through the tiers. San Quentin operated with its own culture, and newcomers felt that pressure the moment they entered reception. The layout separated men through unspoken boundaries, and each section carried its own rules that stayed enforced by convicts rather than officers. The tiers looked stacked with concrete and steel, and the yard stayed divided based on unwritten codes. Every corner carried tension that stayed controlled by inmates who understood the stakes involved in every interaction. The guards watched from their positions, but their presence did little to alter the atmosphere dominating the living spaces. Barry learned fast that movement inside those walls required awareness and respect. Major groups dominated the culture during those years, and names like the Aryan Brotherhood, Black Guerrilla Family, Mexican Mafia, and Nuestra Familia echoed through those chaotic spaces. Each organization operated through rank structures and internal codes that signaled strict expectations for their members. Barry noticed how these groups shaped the prison order, and he recognized the influence they held across each yard. Their leaders controlled politics, and their soldiers maintained authority in multiple locations. The environment demanded alignment for anyone seeking safety or structure. A young white inmate faced limited options upon arrival, and the choice often narrowed to joining stronger crews or facing serious danger alone. Barry noticed how isolated white inmates ended up stripped in the showers by predatory groups searching for easy targets. That harsh reality pushed many toward protection from their own racial groups. Barry understood that standing alone without support inside California prisons often brought harmful outcomes. The prison environment rewarded strength and punished hesitation. Barry spent time observing the rhythm of daily life around him, and he treated those observations like lessons surrounding survival. He watched how respect formed through controlled violence and strategic decisions, and he studied how leaders maintained authority through presence rather than unnecessary noise. Barry noticed subtle movements during yard interactions and saw how certain men gained influence through quick decisions. His quiet nature allowed him to study without drawing unwanted attention. Early confrontations tested his mentality, and one notable incident involved a knife melee with a group of Mexican inmates who approached aggressively. Barry suffered an injury near his eye during that confrontation, and the scar served as a reminder of the realities inside those walls. The encounter forced him to sharpen his awareness and refine his approach to conflict. Surviving that experience strengthened his resolve and boosted his credibility among white inmates. Learning the Aryan Brotherhood mindset required close attention, and Barry slowly understood that their loyalty depended entirely on action rather than excessive talking. Members displayed commitment through violent missions, and their discipline came through shared codes that guided decisions. Barry recognized that respect inside the AB circle emerged from dedication, decisiveness, and steady execution of tasks assigned by elders. Their structure resembled a military unit hidden within prison. The phrase "blood in, blood out" circulated around the yards, and the meaning stayed clear without theatrical explanations. Once someone entered through violent work, leaving required death or extreme consequences. Barry understood that this rule shaped their entire existence, and it influenced every choice they made. Commitment stayed permanent, and betrayal carried heavy penalties. That rulebook forged their identity inside San Quentin. Barry spent long stretches reading books that helped shape his perspective, and titles like The Prince by Machiavelli and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie guided his thinking. That combination of materials shaped a strange blend of charm and cruelty inside him. He learned how to handle people through persuasion, yet he also absorbed ideas surrounding power and dominance. Those lessons strengthened his strategic outlook. Barry gradually developed influence among white inmates due to his steady behavior and controlled aggression. He maintained discipline during confrontations and demonstrated an ability to stay composed during tense moments. That consistency gained attention from men who value reliability in unstable environments. Barry rarely wasted energy, and his actions displayed focused intention. His reputation grew slowly among his peers. California's prison politics became his teacher, and those lessons involved recognizing alliances, understanding rivalries, and navigating shifting power structures. Barry noticed how deals formed between gangs during certain conflicts, and he learned that information and timing held significant value. Manipulation moved through the yards quietly, and Barry practiced reading situations before reacting. His strategic development advanced through constant exposure to complex dynamics. As Barry reached the final stretch of his early San Quentin years, talk of his potential release returned with surprising speed. He looked toward the outside with a sense of possibility, thinking freedom might offer a new direction. That belief created hope inside him, but forces surrounding him inside the prison continued shaping his behavior. The release approaching him carried an illusion that change stood near. Yet the skills and mindset he learned inside those walls had already started rewriting his identity. Barry stepped out in late 1977 carrying years of institutional habits that clung to him under the California sun, and that familiar tension sat heavy behind his steady movements. He walked through Windsor acting like a man enjoying freedom, yet his mind still operated on strict routines created inside San Quentin. His thoughts remained wired to yard politics, and he felt every interaction through instincts learned in crowded tiers filled with seasoned convicts. He tried navigating regular life, though his internal clock still timed conversations with caution, shaped by survival inside cages. Barry looked at simple moments with that same alertness he carried in the chow line, and relaxation stayed distant from his thoughts. His attitude shifted in subtle ways, and that shift pushed him toward familiar paths he walked before incarceration. He returned to corners that reminded him of his teenage years, moving through old spaces with a sharper edge. Old habits resurfaced without much resistance, and he started linking with outlaw circles surrounding Sonoma County and nearby areas. These groups fed into his urge for fast money, and he enjoyed the control those interactions offered him. The lifestyle promised quick payouts and steady excitement, and Barry gravitated toward that world with growing confidence. The structured violence and manipulation he learned inside prison shaped how he handled these new associates, and he slid into criminal planning with natural rhythm. One of the biggest operations tied to his name involved the Fresno bank robbery that occurred in June 1976, which he coordinated during his earlier time inside prison. That plot moved through different hands, and Barry formed the blueprint using his understanding of leadership and secrecy. He passed instructions carefully to trusted individuals, showing his ability to direct criminal tasks from enclosed spaces. That scheme displayed Barry's rising capability to think beyond his immediate location, and it revealed the strategic side he developed through studying political power structures behind bars. The Fresno job eventually unraveled, and the collapse came through a single snitch who flipped once pressure grew stronger. Authorities captured members involved in the robbery, and one participant exposed Barry's connection to the operation. Investigators traced those details, and that information linked Barry directly to planning conversations. The snitch's words placed him in federal crosshairs and ended whatever fragile stability his parole carried. That betrayal proved that criminal alliances never guaranteed protection, and Barry understood the importance of controlling every link in a chain. His arrest transferred him from California's state system to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, sending him into a new environment that carried harder edges. That shift exposed him to different cultures inside federal penitentiaries, and he entered spaces filled with inmates from multiple regions across the country. Federal prisons carried their own hierarchies involving drug groups, regional cliques, and violent organizations that controlled phones, kitchens, and gambling racks. Barry stepped into that system, recognizing the need to adapt swiftly. Federal Aryan Brotherhood members scattered across these institutions observed new arrivals carefully, and whispers spread once they heard that a California inmate with reputation entered the lineup. Barry recognized familiar tattoos and coded signals among white inmates, and he noticed that his California background attracted interest. Those men respected San Quentin survivors, and many viewed him as someone who came from a respected lineage of hardened convicts. He carried himself with controlled composure, and his quiet demeanor created intrigue. Barry joined federal time with stronger ambition than earlier years, and his confidence grew sharper than the handmade blades traded across those tiers. He studied the new patterns around him and identified influential players. His understanding of power had matured significantly, and he moved through conversations with deliberate care. Every handshake, glance, and pause meant something within federal walls, and Barry paid attention to those messages with focused awareness. His earlier readings shaped how he analyzed social structures, and he approached each interaction like a strategic exercise. He recognized that this transition placed him near individuals who valued ruthless intelligence, and he aimed to prove his worth among them. His name circulated through AB networks faster than expected, and older members started noticing his discipline. They saw someone who carried potential for higher responsibilities, and that perception shaped how they approached him. Barry kept his posture low at first, allowing reputation to grow naturally rather than through loud statements. His approach showed strategic patience. Tension built steadily as Barry's reputation expanded, bringing him closer to violent opportunities that would elevate his status even further. He moved into a phase where every decision shaped the trajectory of his prison career, and he sensed that major tasks approached him. The environment around him tightened, and those who understood AB politics recognized that someone with his attitude would soon face defining actions. Those next steps would push him toward darker territory that demanded precision, loyalty, and calculated aggression. Barry's willingness to accept responsibility for critical moves grew stronger each day, and inmates around him sensed that he stayed ready for tasks that required steady nerves. His earlier experiences shaped his mindset, and he believed that advancement within the AB system depended on demonstration rather than conversation. That principle stayed central to their ideology, and Barry embraced it completely. The federal system became the stage where he prepared for acts that would eventually secure his position. As tension increased around him, Barry began recognizing subtle signals pointing toward opportunities that matched his ambition. Conversations in the yard hinted toward internal disputes involving drug debts and dishonesty, setting the atmosphere for retaliatory violence. Though Barry understood that punishment within the AB rarely came lightly, and that culture demanded absolute commitment, every member watched silently for someone capable of stepping into roles requiring heightened aggression. His arrival in federal custody marked the beginning of a transformation that would redefine him, shifting his identity from a restless California inmate to a man preparing for acts that would echo across multiple institutions. He entered this phase holding a blend of intelligence, brutality, and patience that few young inmates possessed. That combination placed him on a path toward becoming someone much more feared, and that progression now pushed him toward the defining act that would elevate him within the Aryan Brotherhood forever. John Sherman Marsloff moved through USP Atlanta, acting like an Aryan Brotherhood associate who understood the rules, yet his mistakes with drug money carried dangerous weight. The Aryan Brotherhood treated every debt as a binding agreement, and unpaid funds marked a man for severe punishment under their strict code. Word spread that Marsloff mishandled a package involving their product, and that issue placed him under watch from members who enforced discipline. The Brotherhood expected repayment with no excuses, and violations rarely ended with simple warnings. Barry Mills heard whispers about the situation, and those conversations traveled through cells with steady rhythm. The leadership wanted someone dependable to handle the problem, and Barry fit the description perfectly. He either stepped forward willingly or received quiet instructions, and both possibilities matched his character during that period. Barry understood that loyalty required action, and he recognized that fulfilling this task could raise his standing within the group. His ambition pushed him toward completing assignments that demanded precision and nerve. He approached Marsloff cautiously over several days, acting friendly enough to avoid suspicion. His demeanor stayed calm, and he watched how Marsloff interacted with others. Barry identified moments when Marsloff relaxed, and he used those opportunities to establish trust. He asked casual questions, shared cigarettes, and built conversations that seemed harmless. Those interactions created a sense of ease that lowered Marsloff's guard. Barry studied his movements carefully, noting which locations carried fewer witnesses and which moments offered the cover he needed. The prison restroom near their unit became the chosen location due to its limited visibility and low traffic during certain hours. Barry planned the sequence quietly, preparing his weapon and rehearsing his steps in his mind. He waited for a moment when the tier stayed unusually calm and tension filled the hallway as men focused on yard movement. Barry approached Marsloff with steady confidence, inviting him toward the restroom under the guise of discussing a minor issue. Marsloff entered without hesitation, trusting the man walking beside him. The door shifted closed behind them as Barry positioned himself strategically. His approach remained silent, and his blade moved with controlled force. The first strike cut through Marsloff's throat, and the speed of the attack prevented any meaningful resistance. Barry delivered multiple slashes and thrusts, targeting vital areas with deadly accuracy. The violence unfolded in seconds, and the brutality left Marsloff nearly decapitated on the restroom floor. The scene displayed raw precision rather than chaotic frenzy, revealing Barry's ability to operate under intense pressure. Guards responded once blood pooled across the tiles and inmates shouted from the hallway. Their reactions showed shock, and several officers hesitated before entering due to the graphic nature of the injury. Men inside the unit talked loudly through their bars, spreading updates across the block. Stories formed immediately, and inmates recounted details with wide eyes. They described the calm expression on Barry's face as he stepped away from the body with blood covering his hands. The entire institution buzzed by evening, carrying rumors about the new enforcer gaining attention. Aryan Brotherhood members interpreted the hit as a clear demonstration of Barry's dedication and skill. They respected members who executed orders without hesitation, and Barry's performance solidified his reputation among older figures. The effectiveness of the attack displayed his ability to stay composed during extreme violence, and that trait impressed those who monitored him closely. Men recognized that Barry displayed the qualities needed for serious responsibilities within the organization. His name traveled across the prison network faster than expected. Prosecutors later described the incident in court filings, painting the murder as one of the most brutal stabbings witnessed inside a federal facility. Inmate witnesses testified about the number of wounds, recounting how Marsloff barely remained recognizable due to the deep slashes across his neck and face. Analysts reviewing the case highlighted the cold approach taken by Barry, noting his lack of visible emotion during the event. These accounts form part of a broader narrative surrounding his rise in the Aryan Brotherhood. Barry's reputation shifted rapidly after the murder, evolving from a clever inmate with discipline into a figure feared even in solitary spaces. His presence commanded attention, and inmates lowered their voices when discussing him. Officers watched him more carefully, though they understood that his danger came from intelligence rather than erratic behavior. Barry carried himself with the calmness of someone who viewed violence as a tool rather than an emotional release. That psychological posture made him unpredictable and deeply respected. The murder marked a turning point that propelled Barry toward the AB's upper tier. Leadership recognized his capacity for strategic planning and efficient execution, and they began entrusting him with sensitive tasks. The organization valued members who combined intelligence with ruthlessness, and Barry embodied that mixture with unusual balance. His clean follow-through on the Marsloff hit signaled his readiness for larger responsibilities. The restroom killing established him as a central figure in federal AB politics. This act placed Barry on a path that would reshape his entire existence, pushing him further into violent leadership roles that demanded unwavering commitment. Men across the federal system learned his name, and authorities started tracking him with heightened interest. The Marsloff hit served as the foundation for his future power, showing that Barry Mills possessed the mindset required to guide the Brotherhood through complex and deadly operations. The event shifted his trajectory permanently, setting the stage for his rise into the AB's top hierarchy. Barry gained new weight inside the federal system after the Marsloff hit, and that shift placed him near men who shaped the Aryan Brotherhood's highest decisions. The AB needed a stronger structure during those years, and conversations inside multiple prisons pushed leadership toward forming a federal commission. The group eventually settled on 3 names that carried influence, and those names were Barry Mills, Tyler the Hulk Bingham, and Thomas Silverstein. Their formation created a power triangle that guided the Brotherhood's future direction through coded messages and trusted intermediaries. The commission operated through indirect channels that protected its members from exposure, and the structure relied heavily on lieutenants posted across several institutions. Orders rarely traveled directly from top men to soldiers. Instead, coded instructions moved through kites, invisible ink, and hand-picked runners who understood the seriousness of every mission. That setup allowed Mills and the others to control operations without placing themselves in risky interactions. It also strengthened secrecy across the AB, reinforcing loyalty among those chosen to interpret instructions. Barry never carried the loud presence of some prison leaders, and his personality leaned toward calculated silence that quickly demanded respect. He rarely raised his voice, and he controlled rooms with steady eye contact and sharp reasoning that impressed older members. His energy stayed composed, which made him more intimidating than men who relied on noise. AB soldiers started describing him as someone who made decisions with cold focus rather than impulse, and that reputation grew stronger with each assignment he handled. Targeted violence helped solidify his authority, and the AB used internal purges to maintain discipline during those early years. One major killing tied to their enforcement came with the death of Robert Hogan, who lost favor with the Brotherhood. That incident happened in June 1980 at USP Marion, and witnesses described a coordinated attack that demonstrated the AB's precision. Hogan's death revealed that Mills supported strict accountability among members, and that stance shaped future leadership culture. Another violent event involved Richard Rhino Andreasen, who committed the ultimate offense by cooperating with federal investigators about an AB connection to a robbery. Snitching represented a severe violation within the Brotherhood's worldview, and Rhino's fate reflected that belief. In October 1983, AB members killed him inside USP Leavenworth with multiple stab wounds that left no ambiguity regarding their intentions. The murder served as a warning across the system, and many inmates referenced it when discussing the AB's willingness to handle betrayals ruthlessly. These internal purges allowed Mills to maintain tight control over behavior within the ranks, and he understood that allowing unchecked disloyalty would weaken their structure. His ability to enforce discipline without excessive personal involvement strengthened his standing among top members. Men who valued stability viewed him as essential to keeping the organization steady. Tension around the federal system increased during this era, and the AB's rivalry with the DC Blacks became one of the most dangerous conflicts inside multiple penitentiaries. That group carried strong unity among its members, and they held significant influence in several facilities. Territory disputes, drug issues, and personal grudges fed into the growing hostility between the two factions. Barry recognized that the feud required strategic responses rather than reckless violence, and he encouraged coordinated action that amplified the AB's impact. Mills created an environment where orders were followed quickly due to the culture he promoted. Soldiers understood that hesitation created vulnerability, and they trusted his judgment in moments requiring swift action. His methods involved careful planning, and he ensured that every mission came with clear expectations. This approach strengthened confidence among members who preferred leadership that balanced intelligence with controlled aggression. The AB's reputation surged during this period, and the Brotherhood became known as one of the deadliest groups operating inside the federal network. Their numbers remained far smaller than other organizations, yet their actions carried enormous influence. Guards, investigators, and inmates recognized that the AB operated with a level of discipline uncommon in prison gangs. Their willingness to eliminate enemies or traitors without hesitation made them a feared presence across multiple facilities. The violence inside USP Marion intensified during the early 1980s, and that environment influenced how members viewed authority. Thomas Silverstein killed Officer Merle Klutz in October 1983, stabbing him repeatedly inside a highly controlled unit. Hours later, another AB associate named Clayton Fountain murdered Officer Robert Hoffman in a similar fashion. These incidents shocked the Bureau of Prisons and demonstrated how far the AB's culture had evolved. Barry never carried out those killings personally, yet the atmosphere around him offered conditions that encouraged such brutality. Members believed they represented an elite organization, and maintaining dominance required extreme measures. These murders placed the entire AB under sharper scrutiny, and investigators recognized that leadership figures like Barry played significant roles in shaping the group's mentality. His influence guided how soldiers operated, and his ability to organize violence made him a central figure in federal prison intelligence reports. Authorities observed his interactions and movements carefully, understanding his importance within the organization's hierarchy. Barry's name circulated across multiple institutions, and older inmates described him as someone who possessed rare strategic depth. Guards noted that he managed to stay composed through disruptive incidents, never losing focus even during tense lockdowns. His ability to control his emotions during violent episodes impressed those watching him, and that trait increased his perceived authority. Mills carried himself like a figure who expected obedience without excessive threats, and members complied because they trusted his vision. His rise within the AB happened rapidly once he joined the commission, and he earned the nickname the Baron due to his commanding presence. Soldiers used the title when referring to him, and the name spread throughout the federal system. Other gangs heard about him, and some leaders acknowledged his capabilities with reluctant respect. His combination of intelligence, brutality, and subtlety set him apart from many prison gang bosses who relied solely on fear. The commission's internal operations during those years strengthened Barry's network, and he learned how to manage conflict across distances by leveraging coded communication. His messages traveled through multiple checkpoints without revealing their full meaning to outsiders, and that method allowed him to maintain control even when placed under heavy restrictions. His adaptability impressed AB elders who valued leaders capable of functioning under severe confinement. Federal authorities recognized Barry's increased influence through intercepted kites, informant statements, and reports from regional facilities. Investigators wrote detailed assessments describing him as a driving force behind AB activity, and they highlighted his involvement in disciplinary decisions and violent directives. Many officials acknowledged that he held more power than numerous high-ranking inmates with larger followings, and they considered him one of the most dangerous men inside federal custody. By 1983, Barry Mills no longer operated like a regular member within the Brotherhood. His intelligence guided their direction, his discipline strengthened their reputation, and his willingness to oversee violent enforcement elevated him into a rare tier of leadership. The commission functioned as a central authority during a chaotic era inside the Bureau of Prisons, and Barry stood at the core of that structure with growing ambition. He stepped into a role that transformed him from a skilled enforcer into a political figure within prison society, preparing him for the next stage of his ascent into absolute AB power. Barry stepped into the mid-80s with a mindset shaped by control, and he approached leadership like a long game that demanded patience and steady calculation. He treated distance as a challenge that could be beaten through clever communication, and he learned how to move information across institutions without exposing the men around him. Coded kites traveled under doors with tiny handwriting that required careful reading, and invisible ink messages moved between states disguised as harmless letters. Those hidden channels allowed him to guide operations far from his own cell, and his influence spread through multiple facilities without loud announcements. The Aryan Brotherhood expanded several rackets during these years, and each operation contributed to their growing wealth and influence. Drugs entered prisons through creative methods involving visitors, compromised staff, and outside partners. Gambling racks operated deep inside cell blocks under watchful soldiers who handled debts with quiet efficiency. Protection schemes placed weaker inmates under AB coverage for steady payments, and extortion tactics targeted individuals who carried outside connections or access to money. Contract hits created another profitable lane for the group, and Barry approved certain assignments after studying the details with cold patience. These enterprises strengthened the AB's position, and their resources grew despite constant pressure from investigators. The Brotherhood functioned like a prison mafia during this era, and Barry acted as a strategist, shaping their direction. He oversaw the expansion of business structures that allowed the AB to maintain steady operations across different regions, and he treated their network like an empire, requiring strict order. Members followed his leadership due to his intelligence and ability to analyze situations from multiple angles. Soldiers respected his quiet confidence, and his ideas flowed through lieutenants who executed tasks with disciplined precision. Barry viewed influence as a tool that required subtle handling, and he managed the organization with a calmness that strengthened morale. The AB established a significant relationship with the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, and that alliance helped them survive several violent periods. Both groups operated with respect for each other's capabilities, and they occasionally exchanged favors during disputes involving drugs or rival gangs. Barry recognized the value of strategic partnerships, and he encouraged collaboration when money or power aligned their goals. La M appreciated the AB's willingness to honor arrangements, and these ties created temporary stability during conflicts that threatened multiple factions. Barry also developed a working arrangement with mafia figures outside prison, which eventually led to the well-known John Gotti protection story. Gotti entered the federal system carrying the reputation of a powerful Gambino boss, yet he faced heavy risks from inmates seeking recognition or revenge. Gotti approached the AB seeking protection, offering legal assistance for Barry's appeals as payment. Barry agreed to the deal, and AB soldiers provided security for Gotti inside the unit. Gotti moved safely for a period, supported by the Brotherhood's presence around him. The situation shifted when Gotti withdrew his legal help after recognizing temporary stability, and that decision angered AB members who expected loyalty. Barry viewed this move as disrespectful toward the Brotherhood's efforts, and he pulled their protection without hesitation. Gotti soon experienced the consequences when an inmate slashed his neck inside the facility, leaving him shaken and desperate for support. That injury forced Gotti to crawl back toward the AB, seeking renewed assistance, and this moment revealed the strength of Barry's influence. He allowed the protection to resume only after demanding substantial payments. This humiliation transformed into a financial opportunity, and the AB secured ongoing resources from Gotti's network. Barry continued building alliances with other white gangs, including the Dirty White Boys, Nazi lowriders, and Public Enemy No. 1. These relationships expanded the AB's manpower without diluting their core identity, and Barry utilized these groups for tasks requiring lower visibility. By keeping these smaller gangs aligned with AB interests, he ensured that the larger organization remained insulated from potential threats. His approach mirrored the tactics of powerful bosses who relied on foot soldiers to handle unstable environments. Each alliance strengthened the AB's ability to manage conflicts, and Barry's network spread across multiple states with minimal exposure. Investigators struggled to keep up with the flow of contraband and communication moving through federal institutions. Officers intercepted some messages, yet many slipped through unnoticed due to advanced coding systems crafted by AB members. Guards uncovered shanks, drugs, and kites, yet new items appeared moments later due to the strength of inmate networks. Barry's ability to maintain order from solitary confinement confused many officials, and they often underestimated his reach. His presence shaped policies in several facilities, and administrators tracked his associates closely to understand shifting patterns inside their institutions. The image of Barry crocheting doilies inside his cell puzzled guards who monitored him. He sat quietly stitching yarn into decorative pieces, appearing harmless to casual observers. Yet this calm exterior masked a mind constantly planning operations and analyzing information. Investigators later revealed that he sometimes hid coded messages within crochet patterns or used the hobby to disguise strategic conversations. This contrast between appearance and reality strengthened his reputation as deceptively composed. Guards described him as a man who looked peaceful, yet created storms across entire institutions through calculated decisions. Barry's leadership throughout these years built an empire that moved through prisons like an underground network with strict organization. His ability to combine intelligence with quiet brutality made him one of the most respected figures within the AB. Inmates across the country spoke his name with caution, and his orders influenced lives across multiple states. The mid-80s and early 90s marked the height of his strategic development, and he shaped the Brotherhood into a force far stronger than its number suggested. By the mid-90s, Barry stood firmly in control of a powerful prison organization that operated with elite precision. His influence stretched far beyond his immediate surroundings, and the AB followed him with intense loyalty. Investigators recognized that he possessed a unique combination of discipline and ruthlessness that made him extremely dangerous. His decisions shaped the direction of federal prison politics, and his tactics prepared the AB for the violent years approaching ahead. The empire he built during this period set the foundation for events that would eventually bring national attention and massive federal retaliation. Tension between the Aryan Brotherhood and the DC Blacks grew heavier during the mid-90s, and men across multiple prisons felt the pressure rising with every violent incident. Conversations on tiers shifted toward retaliation, and both groups moved cautiously, knowing that one wrong step could trigger widespread conflict. Barry Mills and Tyler Bingham monitored these developments closely, and they recognized that the feud was reaching a dangerous point. Their influence shaped AB responses inside several high-security units, and soldiers waited for signals from leadership. Investigators later claimed that Mills and Bingham authorized a system-wide order urging members to strike DC Blacks whenever possible. That alleged directive traveled through coded kites and whispered instructions, eventually reaching prisons scattered throughout the Bureau of Prisons network. The message pushed AB members toward coordinated action, and several facilities saw increased hostility after the order circulated. Men understood the seriousness behind such communication, and the atmosphere inside federal units shifted toward heightened alertness. USP Lewisburg became the site of one of the bloodiest outcomes tied to this feud. On November 12, 1997, two DC Blacks leaders named Frank Joyner and Abdul Salam walked into a deadly setup crafted by AB soldiers stationed inside the institution. The attackers approached with swift movements, striking with handmade blades that cut through flesh with repeated force. Joyner sustained deep wounds that left him dying on the floor, and Salam received multiple stabbing injuries that ended his life minutes later. Officers arrived quickly, yet the violence happened so fast that intervention became nearly impossible. The double murder sent shockwaves through the yard, and inmates whispered about the precision displayed by the attackers. Word spread that the hit represented a coordinated move, reflecting leadership approval, and this interpretation gained traction as investigators uncovered related kites. That event demonstrated how the AB used synchronized assaults to push messages across institutions. These attacks reminded rivals that the Brotherhood could strike in different states without losing momentum, and that reputation strengthened their perceived reach. Another violent moment linked to AB discipline involved the murder of Arturo Ruffo in February 1996. Ruffo fell out of favor with the group due to concerns about his loyalty, and leaders decided that his continued presence created risks. Two AB members entered his cell and strangled him to death, leaving his body positioned near the bunk. This incident highlighted how the Brotherhood enforced internal codes with severe consequences. Barry supported the principle that betrayal demanded action, and Ruffo's death reinforced that culture. These murders attracted significant attention from federal agents tracking gang activity within prisons. Officers recognized patterns showing increased coordination among AB members, and they started documenting connections between institutions. Each violent act created new reasons for investigators to tighten their focus on AB leadership. The Joyner and Salam killings, combined with Ruffo's death, generated crucial evidence that supported the idea of a structured organization controlling violence from isolation units. Agents gathered statements, intercepted notes, and compiled intelligence pointing toward Mills and Bingham. Pressure mounted on several AB members connected to these crimes, and some eventually cooperated with authorities after facing harsh sentences. Former associates described the leadership style Barry used inside the organization, painting him as someone who relied on strict discipline, secrecy, and strategic violence. They explained how he communicated through coded messages and indirect channels, and these details strengthened federal theories about a conspiracy spanning multiple institutions. Their testimonies revealed internal structures not previously understood by investigators, and these stories added significant weight to ongoing investigations. Federal prosecutors started preparing for a major case targeting AB leadership, and the atmosphere inside the Bureau of Prisons shifted noticeably. Rumors circulated about large indictments forming in the background, and inmates saw increased questioning from investigators. Mills sensed that the government was building something significant, and he maintained strict communication protocols to reduce exposure. Soldiers moved cautiously, and lieutenants followed leadership with renewed focus, knowing that any mistake could draw unwanted attention from authorities. By the late 1990s, the AB's violent streak created an enormous trail of evidence linking murders, assaults, and extortion schemes across the federal system. Prosecutors studied every lead involving Barry Mills, and agents recorded statements describing his role in organizing high-level decisions. His reputation as the Baron grew stronger, and both inmates and law enforcement recognized his ability to influence men across large distances. The stage was set for a confrontation between federal investigators and one of the most disciplined prison gangs in the country, and everyone inside the system understood that significant consequences were approaching. By the early 2000s, the federal government shifted serious attention toward prison gangs, treating them like organized crime networks rather than loose groups of violent inmates. Investigators studied the Aryan Brotherhood closely, and they noticed patterns linking murders, extortion schemes, and coded orders traveling between distant penitentiaries. Barry Mills and Tyler Bingham sat at the center of those patterns, guiding operations from restricted housing units through subtle communication. Federal agencies understood that these leaders controlled an empire reaching across nearly every high-security prison in the country. Surveillance efforts expanded with new intensity, and agents collected recordings from informants planted near AB members. Hidden wires captured whispered conversations about debts, hits, and strategy, and intercepted kites revealed coded instructions regarding targets. Officers studied tiny notes written in microscopic lettering, and investigators pieced together fragments connecting violent incidents across the federal system. Prison staff uncovered messages written with invisible ink, created using simple materials like milk or lemon juice, and those discoveries strengthened government theories about a sophisticated communication network. These surveillance projects eventually formed the backbone of Operation Black August. In 2002, the government initiated a nationwide sweep that shocked inmates across the Bureau of Prisons. Heavily armed federal marshals entered multiple penitentiaries with tactical teams, extracting AB members with strict procedures designed to prevent escapes or resistance. The operations unfolded in states like Colorado, Illinois, and California, and officers moved swiftly through cell blocks to seize high-ranking individuals. The sudden arrival of black-clad teams created tension across entire units, and inmates realized that a large-scale crackdown had begun. Barry Mills and Tyler Bingham faced extreme security measures during their transfers, and the government treated them like high-risk figures capable of coordinating violence even under heavy restriction. Officers placed them in full restraints, and air marshals supervised their flights to California, where the federal government planned to try them. The process reflected the level of fear authorities held toward their influence. and reporters noted the rare intensity of the operation. The indictment filed in California contained 40 defendants and represented one of the largest organized crime cases ever brought against a prison gang. The document outlined charges including murder, racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, and drug trafficking, and prosecutors argued that the AB operated as a criminal enterprise under the control of its leaders. The indictment detailed multiple acts of violence linked to Mills and Bingham, and the government framed the Brotherhood as a structured organization with defined goals. This approach allowed prosecutors to use RICO laws normally reserved for mafia figures and large drug cartels. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere stayed tense as defendants appeared in shackles, wearing standard prison uniforms. Court officers surrounded them closely, and the proceedings felt heavy due to the nature of the charges. Witnesses called to testify faced legitimate danger, and many of them moved with hesitation, aware that speaking about AB business carried significant risks. Former AB members stepped forward under protection agreements, describing coded instruction systems and secret operations. They explained how Mills and Bingham communicated through kites, invisible ink, and trusted intermediaries, and those descriptions strengthened the prosecution's portrayal of a structured leadership model. Prosecutors presented evidence against Barry that painted a comprehensive picture of his influence. They highlighted the Marsloff hit from 1979, describing the near decapitation and the efficient execution that marked his entry into AB leadership. The government also referenced the race war directive against the DC blacks, arguing that Mills authorized violent actions across several penitentiaries. They introduced details from the John Gotti protection saga, showing how Barry arranged extortion schemes through manipulation and strategic repositioning. Another key piece involved the murder of Arva Lee Ray, which prosecutors used to show the AB's long pattern of internal discipline enforced through lethal means. Defense attorneys attempted to counter this narrative by claiming that prison violence stemmed from survival instincts rather than structured conspiracy. They argued that inmates frequently faced threats from rival groups, and acts of force reflected defensive strategies rather than organized criminal objectives. They pushed the idea that the AB lacked centralized control, portraying it as a loose collection of independent individuals making personal decisions. This approach aimed to undermine the RICO charges, which required proof of enterprise-level coordination. Defense teams questioned the reliability of informants, pointing out that many faced long sentences and sought deals from prosecutors. Jury deliberations lasted several weeks as jurors reviewed recordings, witness statements, and written messages linking Barry to various acts. They studied the details surrounding each murder and attempted to understand whether Mills played a leadership role or functioned simply as another violent inmate. The complexity of the case created lengthy discussions, yet the jury eventually agreed that Barry held a central position within the AB structure. Their conclusions supported the prosecution's argument that he guided operations, sanctioned violence, and contributed to the Brotherhood's criminal identity. The death penalty phase followed the guilty verdicts, and prosecutors argued that Barry's leadership produced deadly consequences across multiple institutions. They highlighted the extent of the organization's violence and maintained that execution represented a justified response to his actions. The defense pushed back with arguments focusing on his age, prison conditions, and the difficulty of proving direct involvement in some murders. Jurors struggled with the decision, and the panel eventually deadlocked, preventing a unanimous vote for execution. This deadlock spared Barry from receiving a death sentence. During sentencing, the judge imposed 4 life terms without the possibility of parole, ensuring that Barry would remain in federal custody for the rest of his life. The courtroom remained quiet as the judgment was read, and reporters noted Barry's controlled expression throughout the hearing. His sentence marked a significant victory for federal prosecutors and represented the most serious blow ever delivered to the Aryan Brotherhood's leadership. This moment signaled the government's commitment to dismantling prison gangs through extensive RICO cases and coordinated investigations. Berry left the courtroom as a man who built an empire inside steel walls and ended his reign under the weight of federal law. The government considered Operation Black August a landmark achievement, and investigators claimed that the indictment disrupted decades of criminal activity. Berry's influence persisted among some circles, yet his confinement blocked the flow of orders that once moved through the AB network. The takedown reshaped the Brotherhood permanently, leaving members scattered across institutions with weakened structure. The events from 2000 to 2006 marked the climax of Berry's rise and fall, with Operation Black August becoming the defining strike that ended his ability to shape prison politics. Federal agents built this case over years of surveillance, and their persistence finally reached its pinnacle during these trials. Mills entered this phase carrying immense power, yet he left as a man bound by life sentences, confined to the harshest environments in the federal system. A DX Florence received Berry Mills in 2007, and the conditions inside that place tested every inmate who entered its gates. The facility operated with a strict 23-hour lockdown schedule, and prisoners spent nearly every moment inside cells made of thick concrete. Silence wrapped around the unit like a permanent fog, and the isolation created an atmosphere that drained men slowly. Berry stepped into that world with steady composure, understanding that this level of confinement would define the rest of his life. The environment lacked movement, and the harsh structure eliminated nearly every form of casual human interaction. Berry adapted to permanent separation from the organization he once commanded, and he accepted that his influence could not move through the walls the way it did in the mid-90s. Federal authorities blocked almost every communication channel, and investigators monitored his mail, visits, and activity with relentless consistency. He understood that direct contact with AB members carried severe consequences, and the restrictions placed him in a position that limited leadership entirely. Berry adjusted his mindset, embracing a quiet routine designed to preserve his mental stability inside extreme confinement. Guards who worked around him described his calmness as unusual, noting how he rarely displayed frustration despite the severe isolation. Several officers recalled seeing him crocheting inside his cell, stitching shapes into yarn with careful precision. That hobby created a strange contrast to the reputation he carried, and those who observed him sometimes forgot the level of violence associated with his past. His eyes remained alert during interactions, and he studied officers and inmates with steady attention. This focus reminded staff that he remained a sharp thinker even under the weight of a life sentence. Federal restrictions cut off nearly every route he once used to send instructions, and the government remained determined to prevent him from reaching AB foot soldiers. Mail screening grew more intense, and monitored phone calls offered no opportunity for coded messages. Visits were heavily supervised, and many of his conversations stayed controlled by strict policies. Thus, layers of security made it nearly impossible for him to maintain influence, and the Brotherhood gradually drifted without centralized leadership guiding its direction. Lieutenants inside different institutions operated independently, forming smaller cliques that lacked unified strategy. The AB splintered into regional factions over time, and this fragmentation weakened the group's coordination across the federal system. Men once loyal to Berry followed their own plans as new voices attempted to fill the leadership vacuum. Investigators noted that the Brotherhood lost its strong internal hierarchy, and disputes between members increased due to the lack of guidance from top figures. Mills watched that shift from a distance, understanding that the organization he helped shape no longer functioned with the structure he built. He aged inside a cell built for men considered too dangerous for standard prisons, and the years passed slowly as he moved deeper into old age. Berry carried the appearance of someone worn down by time, and he continued crocheting to bring routine into the confined space. Guards mentioned that he rarely complained about medical issues, choosing instead to maintain quiet dignity. His body grew weaker, yet his composure never changed. He remained steady even as his health declined. On June 8, 2018, Berry turned 70 years old, and the following day officers found him unresponsive inside his ADX cell. Attempts to revive him failed, and staff pronounced him dead. His passing ended one of the most influential criminal careers inside the federal prison system. The Bureau of Prisons released a short statement confirming his death, and news outlets quickly reported the story. Journalists described him as a central figure in the Aryan Brotherhood's history, highlighting his role in transforming the organization into a violent nationwide enterprise. Media reactions varied widely, and many articles focused on his reputation as a strategic mastermind who guided the Brotherhood through several decades of conflict. Reporters outlined his involvement in high-profile murders, extortion schemes, and gang politics. They recognized that his name carried weight in prisons across the country, and his death marked the end of a significant chapter in the evolution of American prison gangs. Some coverage emphasized how he maintained influence through intelligence rather than loud displays of aggression. Supporters of the Aryan Brotherhood posted tributes in hidden corners of the internet, romanticizing his legacy as a man who lived and died by a strict code. They celebrated his discipline, loyalty, and strategic mind, treating him like a legendary figure whose decisions shaped an entire generation of white gang members. These reactions ignored the violence associated with his rise, and many posts focused solely on his leadership qualities. Families of victims delivered harsher reflections, reminding the public of the lives lost due to decisions made under Barry's authority. Relatives of men killed during AB operations expressed frustration that he escaped execution, and they viewed his death as the quiet end to a violent legacy. Their statements highlighted the pain carried for decades, and they called attention to the lasting damage caused by organized prison violence. These voices offered perspectives that countered attempts to glorify him. Barry's final years at ADX Florence displayed the contrast between a quiet elderly inmate crocheting doilies and a man responsible for shaping one of the most feared prison gangs in American history. His life ended far from the violent arenas where he once thrived, and his story closed inside a cell designed to erase influence. His legacy remained complicated, shaped by fear, loyalty, brutality, and intelligence. He left behind an organization that fractured without his guidance, and his presence faded into silence inside the most isolated prison in the federal system. Barry Mills left behind a name that moved through the federal system with heavy weight, and his story became a blueprint for how prison structures can transform a restless young man into a strategist feared across multiple states. His rise showed how an inmate with discipline, intelligence, and quiet aggression could reshape the environment around him. Barry entered custody as a confused 19-year-old from Windsor, yet decades of confinement molded him into a leader who guided one of the most violent prison gangs in American history. His choices reflected lessons gained from yards filled with tension and men shaped by survival. His legacy showed how prison politics rewarded individuals willing to embrace harsh codes, and Barry mastered those rules with unusual focus. He grew into a figure who understood that power inside penitentiaries came from information, timing, and enforcement. Each decision he made connected to larger networks involving drugs, extortion, alliances, and retaliatory violence. His influence touched several institutions, and his name carried authority long before investigators labeled him a top leader. He represented the evolution of a man who learned how to command without drawing attention through noise or reckless behavior. Supporters painted him as a disciplined mastermind, and critics viewed him as a ruthless architect of suffering. Both interpretations reflected pieces of his reality, shaped by decades spent navigating environments built on control and conflict. His transformation revealed the impact of incarceration systems that reward violent structure and punish vulnerability. Barry lived his final years in silence at ADX Florence, far removed from the operations he once directed. His end highlighted how leadership inside prison gangs rarely carries freedom or glory. Instead, it leads towards cells that isolate men from the organizations they built. The Aryan Brotherhood continued operating in fragmented form after his downfall, yet none of his later figures carried the same presence. Barry Mills became a symbol of a specific era in American prison history, marked by deadly alliances and highly organized gang activity. His life closed inside a concrete box, yet his story remained part of the larger narrative describing how violence, discipline, and ambition merge inside the federal system. His journey offered a stark reminder that the structures shaping inmates can produce leaders powerful enough to influence entire networks, yet powerless to escape the fate waiting within those same walls.